Hi everybody, welcome to the Eco-Friendly Banter. Today I'll be talking about one of my most favorite similes in Buddhism. It's called the Termite Hill Simile. Sometimes it's also called the Ant Hill Simile or the Termite Mound Simile, and it's from the Middle Discourses, Majjhimika Nikaya, and the sutta is called the Vammika Sutta, Sutta number 23. I'll give the link to it in the description box below. You can listen to it. And actually, it has been recorded very wonderfully by a real monk. So I think what better way to listen to the sutta than that? Just to be very clear, for anybody who gets triggered with insects and all of those things, there's no insect in this entire video. Although it does talk about the termite or ant or whatever, it's not about them. It's more about us, the insects at this huge cosmic scale. So I'm just kidding. But yeah, it's not about them. So you are safe to watch this video. It's more about, I think, the hill or the mound of habits, emotions, memories, etc., that we build and we call my life, so to speak. And before we move ahead, here's a little background about the story. This dates back to the time when Buddha was staying near the city of Savatthi in a beautiful grove that was donated to him. Or, yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. That it was donated to him by a wealthy householder, and near that grove, there was a very dark forest, or the blind forest called Andhavan. In that forest, monks used to go to meditate in complete silence because it was very dark. As the name suggests, it was also called the blind forest or the dark forest. So they went there because nothing, not even light, could penetrate. Of course, it does mean also the darkness within us, but we'll talk about all that symbolism later. And this particular sutta or this particular story is about the monk called Kasapa, the prince, and he was meditating alone at that time. He was very famous for his eloquence, his ability to turn very, very deep truths into beautiful similes, beautiful imagery, and all of that. And once while he was meditating, suddenly a divine being or a spirit, a Brahman, or a wise being, a divine being, he came, appeared before him, rather, and gave him a riddle, which we'll look into today. And I would also like to mention that I've created all these illustrations especially for this video, so do let me know if you like them. And I've done that for the first time, so I would really like to know. Now, as always, before we move ahead, here's a small reminder, a non dual reminder that every single myth, every parable, every riddle, every character in this entire thing, everything that's happening to them, whatever they're doing, everything is happening within you. As within, so without. Nothing, nothing at all is outside of you. Everything is happening within you before it happens outside of you. So just be mindful of that. And as we go through this, just listen to it as a mirror of your inner self, like all of the things that are shared on this channel. Now, the story, as I mentioned before, it begins in Andhavan, the blind forest or the dark forest or the dark grove, which was very, very dark, very dense. Nothing could penetrate, just like our subconscious mind. And Kasapa, when he was meditating, the Deva appeared and called out and said, "Monk, monk, the termite mound fumes by the night and flames by the day. Dig, clever one, having picked up the sword." That's all. That is all. And that Brahmin gave no explanations. That being gave no explanations, just these words. Now imagine being Kashyapa himself. How crazy it would be, really. So it was for him as well. He stayed up the night, rest of the night, constantly wondering, what is the termite hill? What's the sword? What am I supposed to dig for? What was this vision? And in the morning, just like any sensible monk, just like me and you, anybody would have done, if we had the Buddha nearby, he walked straight to the Buddha and told him everything that happened. Buddha smiled, of course, because he knew exactly what Kasapa meant, and said, "Let me explain what the riddle meant." But before we get into the explanation of the riddle, let's stay for a moment with the mound itself. Now, every time he dug into that mound, he found something. And every time the voice of that Brahmin, it said, "Throw it out and keep digging." Over and over again. This kept on happening. The first thing that the sword touched was a sticking point. "A sticking point, sir," he said. The voice said, "Throw it out. Dig, clever one, having picked up the sword. Now that you've picked up the sword, keep digging, and throw the sticking point out." That's exactly what he meant. "A bullfrog, sir," and the answer was same. "A forked path, sir." The answer was same, and he dug again. "And now a filter of ash, sir." "Throw it out. Dig, clever one." "A tortoise, sir." Now you know what the answer might be. "A butcher's knife and a chopping board, sir." "Throw it out. Dig, clever one." "And a scrap of meat, sir." The answer was still the same. Now he found a cobra. It was coiled but also very still. And the Brahmin said something different this time. "Leave the cobra. Do not disturb the cobra. Worship the cobra." And the voice disappeared. The mystery is complete. The riddle is complete. Kassapa goes to Buddha the next morning and tells him the whole thing, as I had mentioned it before. "So," he says, "what is the termite mound? What is the fuming, the flaming? Who is this Brahman? Who is the clever one, the sword?" And he elaborated all of that. I've given it on the screen. And the Buddha, in his characteristic way, started explaining patiently. He explained how all of this is a map of our inner self. As I mentioned, that nothing is outside of you. So, starting from the first thing, the termite mound itself, he said it's the body. It's built from food, desire, habit, and constantly keeps on changing, decaying, and never truly ours. Just like a mound or an anthill, our body keeps on releasing or excreting, just like those mounds do. They have these air currents going within them. So we have to be very careful why exactly did that being not say mountain or a cave, because it's important to note how anthill is hollow from inside. It's made from within but also hollow from inside and has a lot of tunnels, just like a body. It inhabits a lot of our organs and a lot of things, and even a lot of emotions, habits, all of the things which build our character. We keep on consuming experiences and keep on producing reactions over and over again without thinking through. So, similarly, these ants or termites, they keep on creating that mound. It keeps on getting destroyed, and the cycle keeps on going on. This makes it very important to note that here it's not just about one single life, it's about the cycle of life, about being in sansar. So, although this mound, just like our body, looks solid, it is very fragile and hollow from inside. It has a lot of hidden tunnels, just like a lot of hidden layers of our personality. A lot of the things that we show to the world, the things that we hide, the things that we ourselves don't know about, the twists and turns, and all of that. So I think this is an amazing parallel. Fuming by the night and flaming by the day. These are the second words that he said. The mound is fuming by the night. It means it's thinking and worrying about a lot of things at night, about the entire day, about career, relationships, image, tasks, what the mind could not or could do during the day. It keeps on worrying and thinking and ruminating over every single thing under the sun, sorrows of the past or worries of future. That's what most of us waste a lot of our time on. And this restless mind, which keeps on fuming by replaying the day's work, all the happenings of the day, and keeps on heating itself with regret or maybe planning for future or anger or whatnot. You might have also observed this. Right before you go to sleep, you have thousands of thoughts. Everything that happened in the day starts flashing. That's what he meant. And flaming by the day, which means it was on fire by the day. Of course, because there was no mindfulness. The body was very busy and overdoing, rather, overcompensating for everything, trying to prove itself. Busy in constant speech, constant action, constant doing, constant thinking, and carrying on the rumination of previous night into the physical reality. Doing everything that was planned the previous night. And it's a constant loop, by the way. It keeps on happening. And the thing is that the body is never aware. Why? Because there's no mindfulness. The Brahman is the fully awakened one, the realized awareness, or the person who has already realized the truth, someone who has healed the shadow in psychological terms, or someone who's understood the nature of the mind in Buddhist terms, or nature of samsara. The clever one here is me, you. The seekers, the trainee, a sincere learner that's in each one of us, who is still digging and who will still have to do constantly. We'll have to dig, because even our guru, they can give us the tool, but they cannot dig for us. We will have to do that digging with our own hands. We'll have to do it ourselves. Our guru or our teacher can show us the path, but it is us who will have to walk the path. But here, a lot of faith is put in the student by calling that student the clever one. But it's also, I think, personally, I think it's a dart on the ego, because when you call someone clever, sometimes it can be a taunt as well, so that the other person does not get arrogant or stays humble. Next is one of the most important things in this entire simile. It's the sword, the wisdom. In almost all cultures, even in tarot and a lot of things, it's called the insight, intuition, voice of God, communication, wisdom, and whatnot. Similarly, here, it's the tool that cuts through, the insight that cuts through confusion, delusion, doubt, and all of those things. So, here, when he says use the sword to dig, it means use your wisdom that you have gathered with scriptures and teachings and whatnot to better yourself, to learn about yourself. Don't let your wisdom go to waste. Use that to cut through the illusion of samsara. Then, this entire act of digging, it is the effort, as I mentioned before. It's the steady work of looking within again and again, over and over again. You have to keep on doing that. The moment you stop, the evolution stops. So, this is the steady work of looking within, the nature of mind over and over again, the energy and effort that you have to put, a sustained effort. No freebies, no freebies on this path. Sometimes the path can be extremely difficult, but the thing is that you have to keep going, you have to work. So when he says dig, clever one, it means you have to read between the lines. You have to look beyond the surface, beyond what's visible to the naked eyes. Sometimes we rely so much on what is apparent, so much on the face value, how a person looks or how he behaves or she behaves or whatever, that we are not able to understand what goes within them, both in good contexts and in bad. Which is why it's very important to know that face values or how things look can be deceptive sometimes. And all that happens in life has a cause and an effect. And everything needs to be seen with the similar view, I believe. Because when you see everything as a product of a cause and effect, a lot of your attachment to it dissipates. You can check the channeling on Swadhyay for this particular thing. I'll link the video. And when you dig the circumstance itself, you'll see how every single thing is happening as it should. This chart shows all the layers, and we'll go through them one by one. The first point is ignorance, the sticking point. And here, ignorance is not stupidity, it's not knowing, not seeing the things as they are, not seeing the true nature of everything, which means seeing with conditioned mind, seeing as you want to and not how everything is. I did share in one of the videos previously that if an alien comes to Earth, he will not know if a rose is a rose. He won't even know that if it's a plant, because there's no conditioning, right? Every single thing that we see in our lives is conditioned with certain kind of belief systems or patterns or whatever. We'll talk about these things in different videos, as I have in many divine channelings, so you can check that playlist. This sticking point is of ignorance, because this is the very first layer and also the deepest layer, because it colors everything that follows. Every thought, reaction, craving, it all arises from this fog of misunderstanding that both I and everything that my mind desires will exist forever. This fixed identity of attaching and identifying too much, too strongly to this body, to the identity of this body, so to speak, which will end one day. We believe I am this body, I am my story, I am my name, my happiness depends on others. If I am successful, I will be happy. And all these beliefs, they stick like glue. We keep on clinging, we get stuck to our stories, identities, circumstances, and this blindness. So, to throw this out, it means to see clearly, to see the impermanence, and to stop mistaking these temporary forms for truth. In our normal life, it manifests as denial, self deception, refusal to face reality, being stuck in past, or wasting life ruminating over future, or maybe wasting over unfulfilled desires. maybe in career or education, even love or whatever. Because we cannot brave looking within and understand the true nature of these things or our mind or ourselves, which is independent of identities, because it does not grasp, it does not cling, it does not crave. But as they say, ignorance is bliss. Next is the bullfrog, which represents anger and distress. Just like the frog swells and croaks very loudly after rain, we inflate when we feel threatened. We inflate when we feel invalidated, when our defenses they feel attacked. We puff up and make a lot of noise just like this frog. This is ego's defense against vulnerability, against showing the world who you truly are, against the illusion, you know, which makes you feel that being loud or being angry, fighting off, it'll make you safe. It won't. Being reactive, like a time bomb, it'll make you safe. It won't. Trust me, I'm speaking this from personal experience that anger always hides grief. Always has some or the other emotion underneath it, grief or fear. And then it starts armoring itself, like this pain. It starts creating defenses, just like the Seven of Wands in Tarot. It starts creating those armors around itself, or Nine of Wands, through immense amount of reactivity, constant projection. You are wrong. You did this. You, blaming, condemnation, shame, or being just too self righteous. So, throwing this bullfrog out means learning to feel the hurt, but without attacking, without blaming, condemnation, shaming, choosing curiosity and not outrage, transmuting this anger into something productive. Because this is a self destructive emotion, right? It destroys other, but it also destroys yourself. It hurts you more than it hurts the other. So, throwing this out means healing the hurt, the underlying emotion from which this anger is springing. You'll have to understand where this anger is coming from. And that also includes, according to me, inner child healing to a great extent, to a huge extent. Next is the forked path, which means deluded doubt. This is not the good doubt. Sometimes doubt is a good thing, but this one is the pointless doubt, the inner division, the kind of doubt that keeps you questioning yourself, what you want to do and what should be done. Your mind is constantly split between two directions, the way of the truth and the way of habit, inner division. And it is also one of the five hindrances if you are aware of Buddhism in any way. It paralyzes your spiritual progress because it sabotages every single thing that you do. Again, speaking from personal experience, self sabotage is a disease and it needs to be uprooted. This anxious second guessing, indecision, analysis paralysis, all of it keeps you, or rather, keeps us stuck between faith and fear. When you know that you can do, but your mind will keep on saying, what if you fail? What if you are a fake? What if it's all pointless? What if it's a lie? What if you can't do it? While also being secretly terrified to find out that you are just feeding your fears. And fears are nothing but imagination. It's so crazy when you think about it. According to me, I think this is the worst, worst thing to have within our psyche. But then again, not condemning, not blaming, just compassion for our inner self, for a child self, but also strictness enough, like a good teacher, to uproot it because we don't deserve it. We don't deserve this fogginess. So, throwing out this forked path means trusting your direct experience and not questioning it, not seeking confirmations. Walk one step at a time and don't wait for certainty to come. Sometimes it never comes, but maybe walking was the only thing that was certain. I don't know if I'm making sense or not, but yeah. Next is the filter of ash. This means the five hindrances, the leakage. It keeps on leaking the water constantly, just like the mind that cannot hold peace or stillness. Your nervous system is so wired for craving, ill will, malice, dullness, restlessness, lethargy, doubt, the five hindrances, as I said. And when there's a lot of peace, your mind will keep fearing if there will be drama, which means that you have, or your nervous system, it is attuned so much with the drama that it cannot hold stillness or peace that I was talking about. And all this is how your energy drains. It gets drained out, your prana gets wasted. And each time Any one of these five hindrances is active, your mind will not be able to concentrate. And this peace, it will slowly start dripping away. Because anyway, your nervous system is not able to accept it. Most of us live our whole lives, entire lives, filtering experiences through these particular leaks, which have been taught to us from society, from family, or whatnot. And slowly they become our nature or our characteristics. And we never realize that calmness or samta or peace is our equanimity, is our natural state, true state. We are so stuck. We are so stuck in overstimulation, impulsivity, scattered focus, especially in these days when there's phone in everybody's hand and we keep on checking that phone after every couple of seconds, just for one hit. But at the same time, we keep on craving those likes, comments, that jealousy creeps in, envy creeps in when you see somebody else doing something, wasting a lot of time, and the dullness creeps in. And then there's restlessness because you're not achieving the goals that you want to, or achieving the kind of wealth that you want to in your life. And then, of course, doubt follows. I don't even know how accurate these examples are, but these are what are at the top of my mind, and I really want to speak them out loud because this is what's happening, especially to the youth these days. It just breaks my heart, but it's also for the elderly, so there's no ageism here. Anyway, next is the tortoise, the five grasping aggregates. We'll do a video on them, but briefly, these are the aggregates that form our sense of self, self with small s, identity, the form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Just like a tortoise has five limbs, including its head, our self or ego, it extends into these five functions, but none of them are permanent. And also, you have to be very aware that it keeps on expanding and contracting, just like this tortoise, our mind, by the way. But the thing is that if you like something today, which means your mind might be expanding towards it, tomorrow you might hate it, you might be averse to it, and you'll start contracting yourself against it. Doesn't that make sense? Sometimes it's people, sometimes it's places, things, dreams, even food, whatnot. So, what's the point of destroying your inner stillness, your true nature, because of this temporary froth? Or, to put in simple words, wave on the sea. You just have to observe it and let it go. But of course, this is not going to happen in one single day. It's an entire process. But the thing is, it is better to start observing as soon as you can. You might have seen that when the danger comes, the tortoise pulls its limbs in, completely inside, goes inside the shell. And when the desire arises, it stretches them out, just like our mind, right? Expands and contracts. But the Buddha, he calls these aggregates grasped because we keep taking them as me and mine. But nothing is me and mine. It's so funny, but it's so true. It's just the identification with roles and moods and memories and emotions, and oh my god, so temporary. So to throw out the tortoise means stop identifying with these processes because they are natural. It's fine if this happens. But the thing is, you have to understand that they are just processes and then rest as the witnessing awareness that sees them all come and go. The wave comes and the wave passes, and you are observing it. Then there's the butcher's knife, which I think is a very graphic and very vivid kind of comparison, but it's also very true. It means the sense objects, the five sensual stimulations, they are like knife striking a chopping board, constant impact over and over again. This is what we do. We seek pleasurable sensations to mask the inherently turbulent and impermanent nature of these sense experiences. They're very short, give us that thrill, adventure, that sense of adventure and dopamine hit, especially in these days of likes, comments, compliments, whatever keeps you hooked to your phone. It's a loop. Toxic relationships, even daydreaming, ruminations, all addictions, all of those. They are all sensual stimulations. All. An addict always knows whatever they are addicted to is wrong, is not healthy for them, but they still do it because they have no control over their body, their mind. So this is what the phones have done to us. This is what any kind of sensual stimulation or anything that you are subconsciously even addicted to, whether it's being subservient or being too much, oversharing, undersharing, whatever, anything that gives you a hit, but you deep within know that it's not the right thing, whether it's sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, even all those things. It keeps on cutting your mind, just like this knife and the chopping board. They create this surge of pleasure or aversion, and then they start painting all your emotions according to that, your habits, your character. Now, this contact is very sharp, but also very momentary, as we talked. So we keep seeking the next. The goal is just to stay stimulated, and then we call that living. This is what can be called a sensory treadmill that keeps us restless and dissatisfied every day, all day. A treadmill of addiction to novelty, overstimulation, consumption, overconsumption, this fast fashion and everything, even that. To throw it out means not to reject beauty, but to not be enslaved by it. I didn't mention, but sexual pleasures, all of that too. Anything related to sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, anything. So when you throw it out, you are controlling yourself, you're controlling your senses, you're bringing them inward. Your mind will not be going outward all the time, like we talked about the tortoise previously. You have to see this sensory life as an experience, but not the only source of nourishment that you have. Sometimes the happiness is just related to these. And I think that's a very tragic thing to happen to us as human beings. Next is the scrap of meat. Just like we can see crows fighting for little scraps of meat, our mind, it is that attached to greed and relishing. And this hunger does not just mean hunger for food, but also to love, relationships, money, pride, maybe spotlight, or whatever that's called. Spiritual materialism, too. Any kind of codependency, that too. Emotional hunger, so to speak. All of that is just like this meat. Small pleasure, but at the same time, you are spending so much of your energy to obtain it because you're greedy about it. The taste fades, and then the craving renews, and the cycle keeps on feeding itself. It's a self-feeding loop, the engine of samsara. This engine never needs petrol or the diesel, whatever. Choose CNG. It's better for the environment. Anyway, the Buddha calls this relishing, which means you're enjoying because craving feeds on contact and it keeps on proliferating, which means expanding or multiplying endlessly. When you throw this out, you are not rejecting your happiness that you get from it, but you are seeing that happiness as temporary, as a wave on the ocean, and letting it pass without grasping. So when you keep wanting even happiness, that also is greed because life is never supposed to be like that. Now comes the most important and the last layer, which is the cobra, the awakened one, the arahant, someone who has integrated all of this, who is at the stage of understanding, realization, equanimity, or non reactive presence. So, here when you say worship the cobra, it means worship that stillness itself, that awareness that neither grasps nor rejects or craves, which is witnessing everything as it is, which is temporary, impermanent, constantly passing, just like clouds. And I personally believe this, I might be very wrong, but I personally believe that it also, to me, represents Kundalini. Because when you understand Kundalini, you might be aware that before we touch it, when you get into yoga or you start working on your chakras or whatever, it's very, very important to work on your nervous system. If you know about yoga, you know that it's so important to work on your nervous system, do some breathing exercises for maybe 1 year or something, and then get into Kundalini yoga. Because then you are ready to touch that energy. And if it is touched without working on your nervous system or conditioning or working on your trauma or perspectives and energy blocks, which also includes all this grasping and clinging, craving, when you have not attained that equanimity to at least some extent, that witness consciousness to some extent, when you're so attached to your ego. And if at that time that Kundalini is touched, it'll be very painful and can be very, very dangerous. Sometimes people go crazy because then they are not able to ground themselves or understand whatever is happening around them because your psyche and body is not ready for that kind of wisdom or light. This is what I believe because I've observed this and I've also experienced this at one point in my life. So removing all those things inevitably will lead to awakening. But I think before getting into those deeper practices for direct awakening and all of those things, it's so important to enter your mind layer by layer. Beautiful, beautiful. Now, before we end, here's a quick recap. The termite mound is the body, yes, but more precisely, it's the nervous system, as I said. It's the structure of your conditioning which you have to work through. And every single layer is a psychological defense mechanism that you've built around yourself. Your psyche has built around itself to protect itself. Sticking point is the ignorance, it's the denial. The bullfrog is the reactivity, like a time bomb. The forked path is the indecision, the deluded doubt. The filter of ash, it's the distraction which leads to leakage of your energy. Then it's the tortoise, which is the tendency to withdraw or expand towards impermanent things. Then the knife and the board, which is the sensory addiction. The scrap of meat, which is the greed and the hunger for validation. Then, lastly, is the cobra, the awakened consciousness. That is what the goal is. That's what you have to touch in the meditation, in stillness, in your surrender. And how do we dig? It's by staying curious about our reactions instead of identifying with them, by understanding our true nature, which is unmoving, by noticing when we are fuming at night, ruminating over all the happenings of the day, and when exactly is the mound flaming, when we are going about our day absolutely mindlessly. We dig by using this sword of discernment, discrimination, and questioning our own stories, our own emotions, our own feelings, and seeing where they belong, and seeing them for what they are, by trying to witness ourselves and all we think and do. So every time you sit quietly and say, what's really going on within me? You are digging. And every time you drop a reaction, instead of feeding it, you are throwing something out. And once all that is done and understood, and of course, when you dig long enough, you realize that you were never the termite mound, you were never even the digger, but the ground that it all stood on, the ground of being, the understanding of it all, which was always silent, unmoving, and free. And that's what the Buddha meant when he said, leave the cobra, do not disturb the cobra, worship the cobra, worship that understanding, and become that understanding of the true nature of your mind. And if you believe in souls and spirit, that. As always, if you liked the video, please share it with all those who might benefit from it. Thank you.